Welcome to edupediaworld.com. So friends, in the last video we spoke about what is ecosystem. We also learnt about the structure of ecosystem, what are the components that are existing in the ecosystem, and in today's video we will talk about what are the functions of ecosystem. So the functions of ecosystem are as flashed. Productivity and levels is the first function. Second, the decomposition, energy flow, and nutrient cycling. So these are the functions that the ecosystem is carrying out. Now let's learn them one by one. So when we talk about productivity is the amount of production of the biomass. And how do we measure it? It is the rate of production of biomass in per unit area per unit time. So that is how we measure that how much of the biomass is produced in an ecosystem on a particular trophic level, right? The productivity can be of two types. One is primary productivity and secondary productivity, right? Primary productivity is the amount of biomass that is produced by the producers. And secondary productivity is the biomass that is produced by the consumers. So at every level the biomass is getting produced. Let's say if we have plant and the plants are eaten by, let's say, goat. So some amount of biomass is produced by plant. Now when the particular plant is eaten by a goat, that biomass gets transferred onto goat. So now what is the amount of biomass that is produced by in the second level, that is by the goat? That will ultimately be transferred on to the next level, that is the other consumers like the lions or the tigers, right? So likewise the biomass is produced and transferred onto the next or the higher trophic level. So primary productivity is the biomass that is produced per unit area per unit time by the producers, and secondary productivity is the biomass that is produced by the consumers, right? So now even the primary productivity can be divided into two, that is the GPP and NPP. So GPP is the gross primary productivity and NPP is the net primary productivity. So now what is GPP? GPP is the amount of biomass that is synthesized by the producers, whereas this NPP is the amount of biomass that is stored in the primary producers, because NPP is the net primary productivity, which is the leftover, that is the stored productivity, that is stored biomass in the producers. Now I hope you must have understood the concept of this productivity, primary and secondary productivity, clearly. Like if you have not understood, then let me just discuss it again. Let's say you have a plant, and how does the plant make its food? That is by the process of photosynthesis, right? So the plants will use the sun's light, and it will, with the help of photosynthesis, it will produce its food. And basically what is the food? It is glucose. So they produce glucose, right? So that process is known as the primary productivity for the plant. And what is biomass is nothing but the glucose that is produced, right? Now when that particular same plant, let's say, is eaten by a rabbit or a goat, that biomass gets transferred into the goat, and that goat or that rabbit, whichever animal eats that plant, will again produce some kind of biomass, some kind of nutrient, right? So this amount of biomass that is produced by the second level, that is a goat or the rabbit, will be called as the secondary productivity. So that is the difference between the primary productivity and the secondary productivity. And we have the gross primary productivity and the net primary productivity. Now the net primary productivity will be equal to the gross primary productivity minus respiration, because some amount of that biomass is lost in this respiration process, because in primary productivity respiration is the main process that is taking place, that the plants are using respiration, and because via respiration and via photosynthesis they are producing this biomass, right? So NPP will always be equal to GPP minus respiration. And one more thing is very important in here is that the secondary productivity will always be lower than the primary productivity, because whenever the biomass is getting transferred from one level to the other level, there is some amount of biomass which is decreasing, which is lost. And this will continue as the levels are getting higher and higher. Like in the next level, that is in the third level, the tertiary level, again some amount of biomass will be less. So it reduces as we go higher up in the pyramid. So we're going to talk about pyramids also. There are various pyramids of biomass, pyramids of number. So that we'll learn probably in the next video. So that is about the first, that is the function, productivity and levels. This productivity level will depend upon sunlight, many factors. Sunlight is very important. Let's say if we have good sunlight, then the photosynthesis process will take place, and more amount of food will be produced by the primary producers. So at every level, sunlight will play a major role, especially in the first level, that is in the primary producers. It will play a major role. So sunlight is one, soil type is one, types of plant species, and the nutrient availability. So these are the factors on which the productivity level will depend upon. Okay, now the productivity levels can be divided into 4 levels. First is high productivity. This generally takes place in the tropical forest where there is good rainfall. And how do we differentiate between the productivity levels? The productivity is the highest in this level. That is why it is called as high productivity. The productivity of, that is the biomass which is produced, is about 2 to 4 kgs per meter square per year. So this is the amount of biomass that is produced. The second level is average productivity, wherein 1 to 2 kg per meter square per year is the amount of biomass that is produced. Third level is less productivity. This happens in grassland area where the productivity is about 200 to 1000 grams per meter square per year. And the last level of productivity is low productivity. This happens where there are very few green plants like desert and deep seas, where the productivity is even less than 200 grams per meter square per year. So this is how they have categorized the make the productivity level, the difference in the productivity level. Basically, it is the amount of the biomass that is produced. So the higher the biomass, the higher will be the productivity, right? The lower the biomass produced, the lower is the productivity. So that's how we differentiate between the various productivity levels. So let's now talk about the second function, that is decomposition. Decomposition can be further divided into 3 categories. First is food chain, second is food web, and third is ecological pyramid. Now what is food chain? Food chain, we will discuss this food chain and food web in the next class in detail, but however I'll still touch upon it. Food chain is basically, it is the way the food is getting transferred from one tropic level to the other tropic level, or you can say it is the way in which the food is getting transferred from one, let's say, producers to the consumers, then to the tertiary consumers, and then like higher up in the tropic level. So let's say, for example, if I say we have a plant, the plant is producing its food, and the same plant is eaten by a rabbit, and the rabbit is again eaten by, let's say, bigger animal, let's say tiger or lion. So the food is first transferred from plant to the rabbit, and then rabbit to the higher animal, that is tiger or lion. So the energy is getting transferred from the first level, tropic level, to the third tropic level. So this chain is known as food chain. Via food chain only the energy is getting transferred, the biomass is getting transferred. So this chain is called food chain. Now if you have number of food chains that are interconnected, that net of many food chains is nothing but we call it as a food web. Ecological pyramid, if you take any food chain, and if the food chain is represented in the form of a pyramid, It's a graphical representation of a food chain, is known as the ecological pyramid. And ecological pyramid can be of three types, as I already discussed. It is pyramid of biomass, pyramid of energy, pyramid of number. So that we're going to talk about. So every food chain can be represented in a form of a pyramid, right? Let's move ahead with the third function is energy flow. One should always understand that in any ecosystem, whether it is a marine ecosystem or desert ecosystem, terrestrial ecosystem, aquatic or any ecosystem, small as well as, large ecosystems, the flow of energy is always unidirectional. It is always that the energy will flow in one direction. It cannot flow in the reverse direction. If I have a plant and then I have a rabbit and then we have another animal like tiger or lion, the energy will always flow from a plant to the rabbit to the lion, and it cannot flow in the reverse direction. That is one thing which is very important, and it is common to all the ecosystems. Next is that every ecosystem will follow the law of thermodynamics. There are two laws of thermodynamics, the first law and the second law. So it follows both the laws of thermodynamics. So what are the laws of thermodynamics? First law is, according to this law, the amount of energy in the universe is constant. The energy can neither be created and nor be destroyed. The energy may change from one form to another form. So the similar example, the energy will get transferred from a plant to a rabbit to a lion. And energy of the entire ecosystem will remain the same. It will not change. It can neither be created nor be destroyed. It can be just transferred from one component to the other component, or one tropic level to the other tropic level, right? Now the second law says that according to this law, no energy transformation takes place spontaneously unless the energy is degraded. And the change of energy from one form to another takes place in such a way that a part of the energy is dissipated in the form of heat, and the energy flows from higher to the lower level. In the second law, it says that it will never happen that 100% energy will get transferred from the plant to the rabbit. There is some amount of energy that is lost in the form of heat energy. So whenever there is any energy flow, it will satisfy both the laws of thermodynamics. This is one thing which is very, very important. Let's move on to the last function of ecosystem, that is nutrient cycle. There are various cycles that will occur in the ecosystems, like the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, the hydrogen cycle, sulfur cycle, phosphorus cycle. There are other cycles. So these components are always cycled in the ecosystem. In some or the other ecosystem, like the carbon, the nitrogen, the sulfur, the phosphorus, these elements are always recycled. They are always cycled in the ecosystem. So the nutrient cycling will take place in every ecosystem. Now, after we have gone through the functions of ecosystem, we will try and apply these functions and the structure that we learned in the earlier video onto a particular ecosystem. And let's first take a very, very small ecosystem, which is the pond ecosystem here. A pond ecosystem is a very small ecosystem which has both the biotic as well as abiotic components. So first we'll talk about structure. We studied that as far as the structure is concerned, we have two components, the biotic and abiotic. So let's see, how about abiotic components? What all abiotic components will we observe in a pond, in a small pond? We will have water, we will have the rich soil, we will have all the inorganic components, the organic substances, the dissolved gases, and the sunlight. So these abiotic components will be readily available as far as a pond is concerned. So how about the biotic components? Biotic components are the standard three components that we talked about earlier, that is the producers, the consumers, and the decomposers. So what are producers? Producers are the green plants. Those are available in and around the pond, even the small aquatic plants that are available inside the pond, which is like underwater. So those are the producers. Then the consumers are like the frog, the fish, the tadpoles and the animals that are staying in and around the pond, and also the decomposers, right? So now we know that the structure is complete. Biotic and abiotic components are available and the interaction will take place in them. How about the functions? Does the pond ecosystem satisfy all the functions that we talked about? Yes. Productivity, yes, because the green plants will be eaten by some of the consumers, and then the consumers will further be eaten by the decomposers, and that particular animal or the particular consumer, the primary consumer, will then get decomposed and it will produce further some of the inorganic compounds, and those inorganic compounds will then be again used by the green plants in order to produce their food. So the productivity is satisfied. Decomposition, energy flow and nutrient cycle are also very well existing as far as the pond ecosystem is concerned, because energy flow will take place because plants will be eaten by the consumers will then be eaten by the decomposers, and that way the energy flow is taking place, the food is getting transferred, the biomass is getting transferred, and of course the nutrient cycling. So this way we have seen that if we apply the structure and the function that we studied onto a pond ecosystem, which is very, very small ecosystem, then everything gets satisfied. We have talked about the structure and the function of a pond ecosystem. So now let's talk about the human threats to the ecosystem. Very common threats are population. Yes, because of increase in the population, man is cutting down all the trees. There are very few forests left. So increase in the population is a major threat to the ecosystem. Secondly, infrastructural development. Now the urban growth is taking place. There are a lot of dams and highways that are being constructed, and that is becoming again a threat to the ecosystem. Land conversion, deforestation is taking place. A lot of agricultural land is being now converted into industrial land. So that is not good for the ecosystem. Over exploitation and release of pollutants. This is also a major hazard to the ecosystem. Release of pollutants, because they make the air so much polluted. They pollute the air, they pollute the environment, and introduction of exotic species, that is replacing the indigenous species, that again is a huge threat to the ecosystem. So all these are human threats. But if we talk about natural threats, then climatic change is one of the natural threat to the ecosystem. But climatic threat is not that much, and we have no control over the climatic change, which is a threat to the ecosystem. But we do have control over these human threats. So we should take steps to save our ecosystem and to maintain a balance in the ecosystem. Why do you think that the study of ecosystem is important? Why are you studying ecosystem in your classes, in your schools? That is because it indicates the available solar energy. You know how much of the solar energy is available to you, and how much of the biomass can be produced, and how much is the biomass transferred. So when you know what is the amount of the solar energy left, you can still predict what is the future. This study of ecosystems gives you more information about the minerals that are available, right? Thirdly, it tells you what is the interrelation between various organisms. What depends on what eats what, which organism requires the other organism for it to survive. So it tells you a lot of things about the interrelations and interconnections between the organisms. Also, it is very important to know about the conversion of resources. What are the resources left? How can you convert the resources? It tells you about the GPP and the NPP, that is the net primary productivity and the gross primary productivity. Also, it is very important for the ecological survey to carry out basically various surveys of the biodiversity of our ecology, of our ecosystem, and it is very, very important for crop rotation also. So there are not just these, but there are many other advantages. That is why it is very important for us to study ecosystem. So protecting ecosystem is very important, and for this we should always go for eco-friendly things. We should always use things which we can recycle, and that is why we say no to polythenes and no to poly bags. We should only use paper bags, because these paper bags can be recycled. So these days the efforts are to use things which are eco-friendly, that is, which are environment friendly basically. So the first step starts from we all, each one of us should plant trees in our surroundings, in our nearby gardens. We should take some efforts that if we see that the trees are being cut, then we should plant more and more trees, because trees gives you a lot of rainfalls. If there are more number of trees, there is the rainfall will be more, and if the rainfall is more, then the entire cycle will be balanced. Rainfall will be more, the trees will be more productivity, biodiversity. You will have biodiversity basically, which is very important in the for a balance of ecology and ecosystem. Right. Next step is that you do not throw any waste or any plastic material in the rivers or in the nearby ponds, because that will dirty the ponds. That will throwing the waste in the pond, it will also disturb the lives of those species which are staying in the pond. So we should take efforts not to throw waste in the nearby ponds and rivers. And the third thing is conservation of forest. We should try and take steps to conserve our forest, and only if we take these steps can we maintain a proper balance in the ecosystem, because we are also staying in an ecosystem. So for us to stay happily and healthy, it is very important that we should take steps by keeping it clean and green. So thank you for watching Edupedia World videos.